Alright, so I'm not trying to have you guys wait like 3 months for me to do the next, or I guess the final iteration of these different tier. I don't want to say the final one, because I still got to do like all the gold rarity knights and cavalry and all that, but the extra class, I'm just going to throw them all into this one video, and I did not realize how many of these goons there were. There are actually quite a few of them, but I love you guys. I'm going to go ahead and do this now while, you know, it kind of comes off the heels of the other video, so again, you don't have to wait like 3 months or whatever for it. But if you enjoy FGO content, I upload these videos every single day, and all I ask for in return is a like on the video, a subscribe on the channel, and if you're feeling extra feisty and you really like what I do, you can click that join button. However, before we get back into this video is sponsored again by Loot Cakes, and they are again doing another giveaway. They're actually doing a $50 gift card giveaway this time, so, you know, if you want to enter this, just listen to this ad read, right? I promise you get a chance to get in on that $50 giveaway. That is like 2.5 multis or something, or it's exactly 2 multis, something like that. Look, it's a lot of Saint Quartz, all right? So all you got to do to enter this giveaway is come sign up for Loot Cakes with your Gmail account. And this is actually a very good service. I'm very happy that these guys are actually sponsoring this channel, because what this does is essentially you link your Gmail to this account, and so they see what games you're spending on, right? That's how they make their bag. They're like, okay, we're seeing what people are, you know, spending money on over here. And actually, if you look, our game, Fate Grand Order, we're in pretty good hands because we're in number 2 right now. And so they use all this data, they send it back to the companies, but since you've linked your account to kind of share that purchase history, so they know who's buying on what games and what games are hot right now, all that good stuff, you get rewarded. You get some points back, and basically you can use those points that you earn from already spending money on the game anyway to then get a bunch of gift cards, to then get even more gift cards and whatnot back anyway, to then buy more quartz or dragon stones or whatever you want to play, right? So it's a really good system, right? It's basically like you're getting free quartz building up, right, as you're already doing what you would normally do, that being spending money on a lot of these gacha games, right? So this is really, really good. And even if you are a free-to-play player, if you join my alliance over here on Loot Cakes, basically, when one person spends in our alliance, everybody gets points towards, you know, whatever purchase they want to make, like whatever gift card they want to get. So everybody benefits. So even if you're a whale, if you're a dolphin, or if you're completely free-to-play, you know, it's kind of like a good communal thing that you can slowly even help other free-to-play players get stuff as well. So it's really, really cool. It's a very cool communal thing that I really like they're sponsoring, because, you know, I don't like doing sponsors that have nothing to do with, you know, the actual channel. But this is literally like, hey, I play a gacha game, and this is a way for us to get more of like our currency or whatever, as we're doing what we would already normally do. And they're doing a $50 gift card giveaway. So, you know, go sign up with the link down in the description down below. That is my link. You come join the alliance and everything, all that good jazz. And after you do that, as long as you sign up with your Gmail account, then you will be eligible to enter. And then, you know, they'll give away $50 to someone who's lucky. So that's also really sick. I do like that a lot. So, you know, anyway, please check them out. Click the link down in the description. But now back to your regularly scheduled programming. And now before us, we have this absolute behemoth of a tier list to tackle. So we're just going to try to tackle this in a relatively comprehensive yet quick manner, because I don't want to be here for like 40 minutes. Although I'm sure some of you guys are like, dude, I'll take a 2-hour discussion of this tier list. But I want it to be comprehensive as well, but also, you know, quick. But let's go ahead and start off with MASH. So MASH, I think everybody would agree, very solid servant. I mean, pretty hard to argue that MASH is not just like the epitome of like a very solid defensive support unit. She's not like, God, you don't just bring MASH and automatically win the game or anything. Or she's not like, you know, well, actually, she will win you a lot of battles. But she's not like, say, other characters on this list where they literally changed the game when they came out. But it is very hard for me to say that MASH should not be in at least the very solid tier, because she's almost just tossable in any team comp, because she just brings very good utility depending on which form you're using it, but they're both very good, right? I know a lot of people get into this debate a lot of like, oh, is this MASH better, is this one better? In truth, they actually fulfill different roles. The normal MASH is much more of a support in like the, I guess, the traditional sense, right? Because she gives you, you know, big defense, big damage cut on both her first skill and her NP, plus she gives you an attack buff on her NP. She has a targetable 20% battery that also comes with invincibility and 1 taunt, whereas the other MASH is more of like a taunt wall, right? Because she has two ways to taunt, and instead of keeping everybody else alive, she's more or less trying to keep herself around so she can keep up the taunting. Her NP's also not quite as good because you do lose out on the attack buff and whatnot, but in return, you get the Black Barrel skill, which allows you to do big damage against people. So if you have Mash's Buster cards, I guess you can use that for her, but it's very hard to say that she should be anywhere but here, because no matter which one you're using, it does have its uses, either A, as a very good defensive support unit, or as someone that can guarantee you at least 2 taunts, right? If not, you want them to stay around longer so they can, you know, keep up that taunting, right? You could have them taunt twice, you know, have them drop a couple defensive buffs on her NP, and then, who knows, maybe you give her a Buster crit and she does, you know, 30,000 damage or something, and you're like, wow, that was really swell there, Mash, really nice. Then we have Shirou Amakusa. Now, I'm very high on Shirou Amakusa, but I don't know if I want to put him in the top tier as of yet. But this guy is very, very good. Do not be deceived by him being a year 1 servant. Nearly everything about him has been buffed, and I will show that over here right now. Basically, they have turned everything about this servant, where he was just a walking L, into one of the better, like, offensive servants of the entire game. First of all, forget his skills. Like, let's just not even look at all of his skills that have been buffed. This right here on his NP, this is what's crazy, is that he has an AoE NP that yeets everybody's buffs before he does damage. Basically meaning there is absolutely no way to get around Shirou Amakusa's NP doing damage to you unless you just have one of those strict unremovable buffs. But it means, you know, damage cut, you have defense, if you stacked invincibility, dodges, solemn defense, none of it matters. He yeets all of it to do his damage, which is insanely good. Now, the overcharge not too crazy or anything, but if you look at all 3 of his skills now, like, look at all these, how they've just been crazily buffed. You don't really care about this. I mean, it's fine in challenge quest, but they gave him Buster up to, like, help out his damage. This was crazy because he already had the NP every single turn, right? And then they were just like, what if we also gave him an immediate 20% battery? So not only does he get 20% immediately, but then he gets 100% over 5 turns, which I know I kind of harped on a little bit for Arjuna, you know, when I was saying that, like, he's a little slow, but it's the fact that this guy actually has what I want Arjuna to have, and that's also a buffed NP gain rate as well. By the way, he also fronts his own stars, right, which is really crazy. I don't know why that opened that over there, but it's actually really stupid how good this guy is, because he can provide a little bit of stars to play around with and throw that on anybody if he wants, but I mean, you're going to use it on him, right? If you're using Shirou Amakusa, you're using him as a DPS, let's be honest. So, and then he buffs his NP gain, has just insane NP sustain, right, with the second skill, and then also just smacking them with Buster down while also getting a Buster buff. He's just insane as an offensive servant. That is all on top of his really broken NP. So, yeah, I have no problem putting him in very solid. The only issue I have with putting him up higher is that he is a ruler, which means, you know, aside from fighting Moon Cancers, which is not very common, or Berserkers, which have super effective damage against him, which kind of defeats the whole point of bringing a ruler, you're not really getting super effective damage, and I'm hoping they give him some type of special damage mod to allow him to actually get real big, quote-unquote, super effective damage against people, because that would really just perfect his kit as this offensive ruler. But next we have Jeanne, and Jeanne, okay, people are going to be really mad at this because I'm a huge Jeanne stan, but I'm putting her in average because I think she's close to being really solid, but I don't think she's quite there. Her NP is insanely powerful. She gives you HP, she gives you invincibility. You could even use Jeanne to solo a lot of content. In a way, she's like a worse version of Mothman over here, because she can basically do the same thing where you want to arch chain with her NP to just spam never being able to die, right? But she doesn't do it as well because she's not packing a lot of offense. They did try to fix this, though, by giving her a skill that allows her to neuter the enemy's defense, right? Which I think that's a step in the right direction, and I feel like she's going to be almost what Amakusa is, but as like an art support servant, right? Like, I think if they give her a better like star genning skill, like kind of like Amakusa did, they slap an extra effect on it, and then they give her maybe AoE lowering of the entire enemy party's arts resistance, I think that would also be really insane. So I think the groundwork for her is very, very good, but I don't think she's there yet, right? Like, she would not, like, I guess I should probably also explain that when you look at these tiers, right? Even if there's a servant in like this bad tier, right? That doesn't mean you can't have fun using them, right? And just because Jeanne is an average / usable doesn't mean she's bad. It just means I don't hold her to the same standard as someone like Amakusa. Because I know there's going to be some people that are upset because they're like, no, she's so good after a buff. And I agree. I think she actually is very usable now. But I don't think she's one of those, like, I wouldn't tell people to summon for Jeanne, right? That's kind of how I think about it in my head. Would I tell people to summon for this servant? No, I wouldn't do it yet. She's not quite there for me. There's Summer Martha, and yeah, I'm putting her in the please buff tier because if we look at Summer Martha, she's not exactly a terrible servant. It's not exactly bad. Like, she's got a lot of the stuff that she needs, like a pretty decent, I believe she has a triple damage mod, and then she also has a battery, and yeah, she has the 30% battery, gets the additional attack on water side, but then she has this triple different buff type, right, which basically means she can hit a lot of stuff for super effective. Demon, Divine, those are pretty common. Undead is becoming a little more common with a lot more of like the zombie enemies that we fight, and they seem to sprinkle those in a lot of events now, so it's not bad. And then this is a very solid, you know, recovery skill. It's a good base for a recovery skill, but they just need to do something more with Martha, right? Like, I'm thinking maybe slap, if they want to go for like the 1-turn burst damage type thing, if they want to stick with that, just slap on like a 50% buster mana burst for her for 1 turn. I think something like that could really help her fall into a very solid, you know, just really high damaging single target ruler, because at that point she's not competing with Shirou Amakusa, because Amakusa, it's going to be very hard for her to compete with him because of everything he's doing. He's just doing so much, right? It's going to be very hard for them to get her on that level, especially considering, I mean, at bare minimum, she's going to need like 1 or 2 more buffs, right? Maybe 3. Maybe they buff all of these skills, right? She's going to need a little bit more work. But I think they slap on like a buster buff, maybe give her some method of survivability, and I think she's going to be really cooking at that point. So, you know, she's in please buff because I do think, again, kind of like Jeanne, she has somewhat of a niche she can get into, but she does need to get buffed in my opinion. Although, I don't think she's actually unusable. You know what? I might actually put Martha up here because I do actually think you can get some use out of Martha because her 3rd skill having the triple damage mod and then her having, you know, decent bases for her other skills, you can get some uses out of her. And the fact that they gave her a 30% battery does help her out a little bit in the current era. It does help her not just be complete dookie, right? That did age pretty well for her. And really the only restriction is that she needs to be on water side. And I have a feeling we're going to get either a support servant that gives people that buff, or we're going to start getting CEs that grant people their battlefield. I really feel like that is something that is going to be coming on down the line. And if we do get something like that, you know, then that's actually going to help out Martha a lot. So yeah, we have that. All right, Himiko. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Himiko as a character, but dude, there is no denying that Himiko is just absolutely filthy, dude. Himiko is disgusting. I mean, if you slap Himiko in a team comp with Castoria and Merlin, I don't think it's even possible for you to die, because she basically is a DPS ruler, right? She's a DPS ruler that also has mad survivability and then also does big crits, right? Like, if you look at everything she does, like, don't even ignore the demonic thing. Doesn't even matter. Like, who cares? You might not even see that all the time. You just get literally everything like a DPS servant would want. Like, she's so stupid good. Like, look at this. She gets 100% buster crit damage and she absorbs it into that, right? It's stupid with the 50% battery. And then this NP, it's so dumb, man, because then she's stacking more crit damage, more buster damage, and then the reason she's so good in those team comps is because she gives everybody 2 stages of overcharge. So that means Merlin is starting off giving you 15 stars, and then that Castoria is starting off giving you 3 hits of solemn defense. It's really, really, really dumb, right? And you don't even need the double Merlin because she's already fronting, you know, the 100% crit damage for herself. She only needs the additional 100 for Merlin. And then if you can keep stacking up this NP, you're getting even more crit damage, right? So Himiko is gross, right? If you're like more of an NA player, you might not understand why she's up here, but the Himiko Merlin Castoria strategy it's one of those invincible strategies. Like, it's actually disgusting. Like, I actually will recommend people to summon for Himiko when she comes out because I just think she's that stupid good. Then we have a servant that I'm quite fond of, but I do kind of think she's just a little average. I do like Lancer, I guess, I was going to call her Lion King, but I was like, no, she's technically not the Lion King in Summer, even though they give her, like, the Lion King eyes, and they kind of made her act like the Lion King. They still were, like, very clear that it is Lancer Artoria in a bunny suit, so whatever, Bunny Artoria, right? I think she's very solid. I think she's very good, obviously, but I just think she's very generic, maybe? Like, I don't think she's, like, exactly wowing me or anything, right? Maybe actually we'll put her up here, because I actually think she's very well built. These two are kind of like, they're good, but they're not like good, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're pretty average. I would actually consider her a bit better than them, because you look at her and, like, everything she has is just very solid. Like, a 40% battery with the ability to also, you know, refund her NP on her own NP. That's also very good. This also gives her additional card utility with, you know, her having, like, just a very solid deck on top of all of that. I mean, I know people they get all mad about this. They're like, I don't like having to time my buff. Well, if you time the buff, you get an additional 30% attack. That's good. But if you miss it, if you whiff it for whatever reason, gotcha, right there. She has an additional 40% attack that lasts for 3 turns, which is insane. Absorbs crit stars. And then on this, when they buffed it, not only did they give it the extra NP gain rate, which I actually think is really good and undermined, but they also allowed it to where her shuffling ability actually just gets a bit better. So, actually, yeah, I will put her in this tier because I actually think she's a bit better than that. Because I don't want my own bias to get too much in the way. Like, obviously, I really like Lancer Artoria. I went out of my way. Like, I don't usually spend money on the game, but I spent money to get her, right? So, I don't want to be too biased or anything, but I do actually think she is a very solid servant. Again, falls into somewhat of an issue with Shirou Amakusa, where they are rulers, so using them as DPSs does kind of go counterintuitive to, you know, their class. Like, they're not supposed to be kind of like DPS servants, although some don't really care about, you know, not being a DPS class, but I will put her up there because I actually think between the battery being able to refund on our NP, having the card buffs, the shuffling buff that did get buffed, if this was pre-buff, she'd probably still be up here, but it'd be a bit more shaky. But with that buff and making it a bit more consistent with her shuffling ability, and then with everything else she does, I actually do think I'm very comfortable putting her up here and very solid. Same thing for Luvia. Luvia is very solid as a DPS arts ruler that can actually gen a lot of stars, right? People don't really talk about Luvia all that often, which is a little weird. But she's very capable of dropping a hefty amount of stars on a turn and just getting the ability to play around with it a lot. I don't understand why people don't talk about her all that often. Is it her artwork? Do people just not like that? You know, she's a little hench. I don't know. You can see it in her arm. She's got a little bit of muscle there, bro. So I don't know. Maybe people don't like that. Maybe they just don't like the artwork in general. But Luvia is not bad. Like, Luvia is good, right? Like, she's an art servant that can front her own stars. She's actually really insane, you know, and having an art servant that can front a lot of their own stars basically means that they're going to be doing art crits a lot, which does mean they're going to be looping their NP a lot. So I don't understand what it really is. She's very good, very solid. Not a whole lot for me to say. I mean, just an art servant that fronts their own stars, can loop their NP, just very good in all that aspect. Like, very basically good. Then there's Samba Quetz. Oh boy, what do we say about Samba Quetz? I mean, she probably will go in the middle, like the usable tier, because she is free to play. But outside of farming, I don't see a lot of uses for her. I mean, they made her very basic and very good on that front, right? Like, everything she does here, nothing is super broken, but she doesn't really, I don't know, do anything that really wows me, right? Like, everything here is what I would expect, like, for a basic servant to be able to do, right? But she doesn't have that niche, right? I guess it's also because she's free to play, and I expect a lot from the free to play servants now because we have people like Kintoki, we have people like Chloe, we have Summer Yu, you know, we have all of these servants that are very good, very solid free to play options. So I just expect a lot, and then they give us Quetz. And it feels to me like she should have had a battery, right? Like a 20 to 30% battery would have made her really, really good, but she doesn't have that. So she's in this very, very weird position where all of her skills look like they're a very good setup for something, but there's no ultimate payoff, right? If that makes sense. Like, I like this, but then it's kind of neutered by that, right? Like, if you're going to make her a star genning servant, why not give her more hits on the NP? right? But if you want to just be a farming servant, then why doesn't she have a battery, right? Like, it just seems like she's missing something, or they purposefully held back, right? And that's kind of why, like, I think she's actually very inappropriately rated servant by the community, because I see people acknowledge that she's okay, but nobody really breaks her out all that often. That's just because it feels like there's something missing with Samba Quetz. And I really think if they want to go ahead and buff her, they give her a battery or something, and that actually could help her out a lot. Then there's Holmes. Holmes I'm going to slap up here, just because it's very easy to talk about Holmes. I don't even have to, like, spend that long talking about him. All I got to do, if that aren't familiar, I just need to show you his NP. That's all I have to do. I don't have to show you any of his skills, because honestly, Holmes' skills aren't really all that relevant. You don't really care about any of those. Holmes is just disgusting for this, right? He neuters the enemy's defense. He gives everybody Pierce invincibility, Pierce defense, and 50% crit damage, right? That's all you need to know. That's all he got. That's all he does, right? He also provides some stars for you to play around with, so that, like, not only is he giving you decent crit support and basically saying, have at thee, you know, just slaughter whoever we're fighting, because they're not getting around this. The only way to get around Holmes's NP is to have high damage cut, a special resistance, or solemn defense, but we haven't fought Artoria yet. So basically, Holmes is going to allow you to slaughter whoever you're fighting. You drop some stars for you. If you want to have him crit, that's where you have these two skills, right? Because then he can absorb the stars, and then he can buff his arts performance. But honestly, you're just better off bringing Holmes as, like, a secondary support, right? Just have him drop the stars and just have him go to Hammertown, right? He's very, very good in that aspect. He just doesn't get used a whole lot. I have no idea why. Because when I talk to people about Holmes, they're like, yeah, he's really, really good. And I'm like, why don't you use him? People are like, I don't really know. You know, I've never really thought about using Holmes. But if you haven't used him, I highly encourage you to, like, slap him in a team comp. You know, maybe bring him to some of these challenge quests. Because I think he actually is fulfilling the role of kind of a ruler very well, right? Where you have Jeanne and you have Himiko and Holmes over here that are very good rulers, right? Taking full advantage of the fact that they're very splashable in any team, because they are rulers and they have this type advantage against everybody in the game. Like, they don't take that much damage. And so he can just kind of sit there, keep himself alive, and just have you go to Hammertown on all of your enemies, right? He's very, very good in that aspect. Do I even need to talk about Mothman? I don't think I do. I kind of, like, I did a mini little spotlight when we were talking about him in the challenge quest video, but I don't really think I need to talk about Mothman too much. I mean, he's very broken. He's basically everything that Jeanne wants to be, right? And then we have Karen. So this is a servant that, after I was able to talk about her initially, you know, I had some more time to kind of think about her a little bit. I still think she's rather broken, right? The only annoying thing really that I think is going to get under people's skin is her sucking the party's NP. But other than that, dude, like, she has, like, 50 different ways to gen her NP. She's got a very solid NP in and of itself, right? Very solid. This is underrepresented? No, it's underrated. That's the word I'm thinking of. Because this is like the Jalter skill, but it's AoE. Like, people... So we'll talk about Jalter when we get to Avengers, but Jalter has this ability to, like, nuke the enemy, and then, you know, you might break their break bar, and then after you break an enemy's break bar, they like to buff themselves, but then she just says, nah, you don't do that. Like, she negs all of their buffs because Jalter has buff block. This is like that, but it applies to everybody. So in a challenge quest setting, especially where there's multiple enemies with break bars and whatnot, and they're all gonna be popping weird effects, Karen can literally just be like, yeah, no thanks, buddy. I'm not dealing with whatever the first buff it is that you're gonna pop. And if it's like a big composite buff, so let's say that you're fighting an enemy Karen, and she tries to pop her third skill, right? If this buff block is on her, all of that fails. That all fails. None of it goes through. It's counted as one big buff, right? And so it doesn't just neg one effect, it negs the entire buff and everything in it. So it is really stupid good. I think Karen is very, very, very downplayed. Like, people saw her, she came out, we were all like, yeah, Karen's really good. And then nobody talked about her ever again. Now, the thing is, I'm not putting her up here with Himiko and Mothman up here because I don't think she's quite that good. I kind of feel that she's like the quick version of Amakusa, right? Where it's like Amakusa's a very, very strong AoE buster ruler, and Karen is a really strong, quick AoE ruler. But I don't think they're these levels of broken, where these are like almost must-haves on accounts because of how busted they make people, right? Like, how busted it can just trivialize the game once you get them in your account, right? So I'm going to put her there for now. right? Plus, I feel like this is got to be a special tier. Like, this is got to be a very exclusive club, right? And as we'll talk as we go through the video. Angra, Mainyu, don't need to talk about you. You're just absolute trash. Please buff this man. Please help him out. He needs severe amounts of help. Salieri, very decent, very good. His whole kit is kind of revolved around the whole, like, 3 attacks on 5 turns type thing, and all of his cooldowns are very reflective of that. Very solid as, like, kind of like a free-to-play option for an arts Avenger. And if you don't have access to any of these other Avengers, because notice, like, these are all, like, premium units, right? It's very hard to get your hands on some of these, because, like, yeah, they're only around for specific raid. I think Lobo is the only one that's in the general pool. So it's just like, it actually might be funny that you might have more copies of Lobo than you might have Salieri, which is a little funny, I think, but probably not true with like the class banner thing that came around where he was the only 3-star. So if you took advantage of that, you should have an NP5 Salieri, and he's very solid on that front. I think he just needs a few more little tweaks here and there, but after his most recent buffs on JP, they definitely made him a bit more solid. But nothing too harsh to say about Salieri. I just want them to slap on a little bit more on him, maybe some survivability in that aspect, maybe something along those lines I think would be really good for him. Same thing for Mao Nobu, although for Mao Nobu, I know the one thing that I need for them to do for Mao Nobu to make her good is to give her some crit damage, because everything outside of that, I think if they give her some crit damage, I could actually bump her up into the next tier of being a solid offensive servant, but it's definitely the one thing she's missing, because they gave her like a decent battery, a decent buff against Sky attribute servants, if I'm remembering correctly. They give her an invincibility, a decent scaling attack buff that every single turn her attack buff gets even higher. They give her all of this good stuff, but they left out the crit damage, but they gave her the ability to like refund stars every turn. It's just very, very odd. Like, you think, it just feels like she's either missing like a 100% crit buff for like 3 attacks for 3 turns, or just like a 100% crit damage buff for like the entire turn. It feels like she's missing some massive crit buff, right? It just feels like they left that out, and I have no idea why. So give her one more buff, and I'm confident putting her up here with some of these other servants, but until they do that, I'm not quite confident enough to put her up there, right? So I'm sure a lot of people kind of know what I'm talking about, right? But I don't think she's bad. A lot of people are like, Mao Nobu, absolute cheese, put her down here. It's like, no, she's not that bad. You can definitely get some mileage out of her, but she does need a little bit more to kind of push her to this tier. Like, it does feel like she's a little incomplete at the point. Kagekiyo over here, she's kind of, okay, I'll just slap these two right here because they're very similar to like Amakusa and Karen, except they're single target, right? Jalter, you already know about Jalter. She's very straightforward. Buster, point her in the right direction, she blows stuff up. Highest attack in the game. Very, very simple. If you pair her with someone with the dragon trait, she double buffs them. That's about the only nuance there is to Jalter. Aside from that, it's point her at somebody and she blows them up, right? She has the buff block on her NP like I was talking about, but aside from that, not a whole lot of nuance. Kagekiyo is basically the same thing, but she's quick. I guess I'll pull her up just for people that may not be as familiar, because she's, you know, only been around once on on the JP version of the game. She does have this like unique buff. I believe it's on her NP. It's like the kill more or whatever. Yeah, the thirst for vengeance, right? She can stack that to get extra damage. She's very solid. I know a lot of people don't know too much about her because I actually don't know why people weren't looking out for her. She's really insane. Like, she's actually really good. But yeah, like, as you can see, she's packing a whole lot of like really good stuff here, right? Like, I think this was a little bit too much, right? And I think this was a little bit too much, right? Like, I think these were a little overboard. Like, honestly, if she didn't like have any of these other skills, I don't think it would really matter all that much. But yeah, like, this plus this makes me confident enough to put her up here and say that she is the quick version of Jalter. Although, that is the weird thing. The weird thing is when I call her the quick version of Jalter, people get like uppity and they don't believe me. But it's like, she has a 100% crit buff. And sure, like, instead of Jalter negating buffs, she just removes all the buffs entirely. So you remember how good that is for Shirou Amakusa? Well, she also has that effect, basically meaning pierce invincibility, sure hit, piercing, none of that matters to her, right? Because as long as the buff is removable, she'll bypass. And obviously she gets stopped by you know, bosses that have like a permanent defense buff, or they have a permanent invincibility for like special attacks, or something like William Tell, right, where he has like that weird effect because she can't remove that. So a lot of that, yeah, I can understand people being annoyed at that, but I mean, other than that, like, I mean, you could even give her stuff over Jalter. The fact that she has guts, right? The fact that she has a way to actually keep herself alive outside of Jalter just doing big spam damage, right? So yeah, she's definitely good enough to be up here. Like, she's a very high DPS servant. You could, again, almost look at her as like a more modern version of Jalter, but she's a quick servant, right? So, you know, I will not hear any big Ushi slander. She is staying in very solid as of right now. I might adjust this as the video goes on, because I have a general idea going into these videos where I'm going to put everybody, but then as I start speaking and start seeing how the tier list shapes up, I generally kind of start shifting stuff around. Gorgon, very good. Actually on rate up right now on the NA version of the game. She's got an insane glow up. They buffed a few of her skills here and there, giving her a little bit more offense, you know, all that good stuff, and that kind of did help buff her up again, but she's very generic. I don't really think I need to pull her up. I think you pretty much know how Gorgon is. I did a video on her like 2 months ago. You can check that out if you want an in-depth look. Basically, really solid for just killing stuff. You know, has the decent stun. I hope they buff that to the Babylonia stun, because if you don't know, the Gorgon boss in Babylonia has an AoE stun, and that's not all that broken. Like, Shuten Doji has like an AoE charm. You know, it's not uncommon to have like these AoE lockdown skills. Like, come on, give it to like Gorgon is big Medusa. Give her the AoE stun. Give her something like that. And I mean, what else would they give her? Like, she already has decent crit damage. She already has like a pretty decent attack buff. What else would I want for her? I don't really know. And that's always when it's really fun, when I don't know what a servant really needs, and then FGO comes out and they're like, yeah, we gave Gorgon an 80% battery, and I'm like, Jesus, okay, like, now we're talking, man, now we're talking. But yeah, Gorgon's definitely really solid. Kind of odd that both of the Buster AoE Avengers really aren't super great, at least in my opinion. I know some people are going to be like, I use Gorgon for every mission and I destroy all of them, and it's like, okay, buddy, if that works for you, that works for you. But again, they're very basic in my eyes. Although, in that front, do I want to have Mao Nobu on the same tier as Gorgon? Because Mao Nobu, at the very least, is really only lacking crit damage, but she has a special damage mod. She has like the good raw survivability and invincibility, the scaling defensive, or the scaling attack buff. I think I'm going to leave them in the same tier, but as far as it would go, it'd be like Mao Nobu's the very high of this third tier, whereas like Gorgon would be a bit more in the middle, right? Or probably like number 2, like right after Mao Nobu. I know that the way I did it, dude, I just put the most recent one up there, is a little deceiving, but yeah, just know that. I don't want people getting upset in the comments being like, I can't believe you put him down there. I know she's popular, so I'm trying to stave back the angry people already. Dante's, I don't need to talk about. He's very good. I'm going to put him up here because, you know what? I'm also going to grab Space Ishtar while I'm here. Where is Space Ishtar? Why are you down with the foreigners? I'm putting them right here because basically the main staple of summoning for these characters are that they are insanely good farmers. Like, Dante's is the premier, not the premier, the premium, that's the word, the premium quick farming servant, and Ishtar is the premium arts farming servant, right? If you have Scotty or you have Castoria, you know, respectively, these servants are the best for farming, right? They do very good damage. You know, they're able to farm very effectively. They're Avengers, so you can pretty much bring them to anything. Unless you get some weird, like, moon cancer node, I guess. I think we did actually get that in Imaginary Scrabble, so that was, like, the only time they threw us a curveball, but other than that, it really isn't happening. Do keep in mind that they are pretty much up here in very solid for that exact reason. If you do not value farming at all, then especially Dante's does plummet a lot, because Dante's pre-Scotty was not all that good. He was filled with flaws. And then Scotty came out here and just gave him like the best purpose in the game. Since, you know, 90% of the game is farming, so these two being the premier farmers, I'm going to put them in very solid. Like, they're the best in their class for the thing that you're going to be doing 90% of the time. Of course I'm going to put them up here. Like, why would I not put them up here? I actually don't even know if I'm ever going to use this please buff tier. So actually, I think I'm going to get rid of this tier because this tier is a little mean. I'm going to do this because I think I like doing this 4-tier thing. I don't like doing the 5-tier one, right? But because I think about that, I'm like, am I going to slap Lobo here? I don't think so. I don't think Lobo's... I think it's disrespectful to put Lobo that low. But he's not... Okay, let me show you guys what I'm talking about. Let me just show you guys what I'm talking about. He's not bad. right? The problem is that they gave him like a weird insta kill mechanic. That's not the best thing ever. And then they like made one of his skills a skill that like lowers enemy insta kill resistance, and you're like, okay, that's a little, you know, not the best. Like that's a little wasted. Like I'd prefer you've just given him like a 50% quick buff for one turn, like yeeted. Oh, they didn't even give him the insta kill thing on this. Oh yeah, it's the overcharge, yeah. And then just gave him like lowering quick resistance that activates first. I would have just much rather had that. But everything they have with him is very mild. Like they're really tame. They're like star weight for one turn paired with defense. What is the synergy with those skills? It's very odd. Like it's just like this makes sense because all the monster strength characters have this, but why is it only 30%, man? Just give him the 40% version, right? Give him Big Medusa's version, right? Why not just give him that? And then they're like, oh, well, he's a quick servant, getting a lot of stars, and he has star weight. But then not only do they give him just a really pathetic quick buff or crit damage buff, like this is for the only crit buff you have, 20% is just absolutely horrendous. But then the weird thing is that it lasts for 3 turns, but the star weight lasts for 1 turn, man. So like, what, I get this crit buff for 3 turns and I can't. You might as well just made it a 50% or 100% for 1 turn, man. You might as well. I don't even know, man. Like, Lobo is built just so disrespectfully. There are pieces here to actually build a good servant, which actually I think this is how I'm gonna frame this. I'm gonna say like this average slash usable, or like the, you know what, this you know what, this is what I want. This is what I want to do. This is not, these are the worst servants. These, what I'm going to put down here, these are the servants that I actually really want to see get buffed, right? These are the ones that, like, I think if you buff them, they either become, like, very solid, or they could potentially be in, like, this best tier, right? That's what I think I'm going to do. So these servants are not necessarily worse than these servants, right? But they need something. Like, for me, I feel like these servants are lacking something, right? You know what, Jeanne, you're going in there, too. You know, you're going in there, too. These ones, like Salieri and Gorgon, I feel like they're pretty complete, and I just feel like they're pretty average, right? Like, I don't think they're super exceptional. I think they're solid, right? They're just a very good, decent servant, right? Whereas, like, these guys are, like, you know, the staple servants you want to run. Okay, that's the clarification. There's how I'm running this tier list, right? It's my tier list, and this is how I'm reading it. Sheriff is in town, and, you know, that's how we're doing it. All right, let me get back to this. King Protea, enough said. I'm very solid. She basically can't die in Challenge Quest. Like, the one flaw for King Protea is that, sure, she could get a lot of max HP, but then if she got slapped by a strong NP, she would die, but now she builds up NP damage resistance alongside her HP, so she can't die, right? And she has a skill where you can sacrifice all the stacks for HP, or for NP, but why would you do that, bro? Forget the NP. You'll get that in like a turn or two. You're using King Protea. You're stalling anyway. Just keep the HP stack so she has the Buster buff on her NP. Just keep that around, man. King Protea is absolutely busted. Like, as long as you don't mind sitting around for a little bit, she's really, really good. She basically can't die after she starts getting some stacks going. And God forbid you pair her with someone like Merlin, who gives her extra stacks of max HP, you know, gives her crit damage, what she wants. It, like, gives her a hardline survivability, like, HP refund stars. Dude, she's actually just stupid, right? She's so dumb. That's how good she is. She's dumb, really good. Then there's Sitsunai. So I'm always trying to be one of the guys that comes out here and I'm like, yeah, I'm a pretty big defender of Sitsunai. I think she's pretty good. I like to use Sitsunai. And then the more and more that I started using her in harder and harder difficult content, starting to think she needs a buff. I'm starting to think she needs something, because I can't tell you what it is. She just always seems to underperform. Because, well, let's pull her up. Let's pull up Sitsunai so I can tell you guys exactly what I'm talking about. Because I want to show you guys a servant that looks good on paper, but then as soon as you start diving into their gameplay and actually start using them, they seem to flop a little bit, right? They seem to not be performing as well. So we come to Sitsunai. Well, like, survivability, that's really good. Giving the entire party DR, that's nice. Her third skill, this is kind of like the roulette skill, right? Where it's like, ooh, I'm going to get, like, some attack, some stars, and a 30% battery. But this shouldn't matter. Like, usually this wouldn't bother me, because I'm like, it's at an 80% chance. This isn't really all that necessary. This is nice, but the battery is the main thing I want. Plus, her second skill, she's getting the arts buff guaranteed. Debuff immunity is nice, but I really just care about the arts performance, honestly, because I want to loop the NP. But Then you just kind of get some odd stuff where it's like reduces dragon enemies, and then maybe like she needs something. Like, I think the easiest way to fix her is to buff the NP, slap on an arts resistance down on whoever she's attacking, and it activates first, right? I think it's one of the easiest ways to buff her. Just slap that on her, and I think that really helps her out a lot. And then maybe give her a skill that allows her to buff her own buff success rate. Maybe over here, like, since this is kind of like a party skill, you know, like she's buffing everyone, maybe it buffs the whole party's buff success rate by 20%. I think that would make her a bit more consistent alongside the NP buff with the arts resistance down to buff up her damage. I think that could actually help her out a lot, but you know, when you actually use Satanai, she doesn't perform the best, right? She definitely needs some sort of buff, and I think what I propose actually would help her out a lot. Okita Alter, so she's very average. I'm going to put her in here because I think she's pretty complete as a servant. But if they were to go ahead and buff Okita Alter, I think one of the best things they could do is give her the ability to swap her NP from Buster to Quick. Because I'm sure I've gotten this comment actually a lot. Of a lot of people saying that they would much prefer her as a quick servant, and I agree. If she was a quick servant, she would perform like infinitely better, right? Because then she'd be dropping all the stars for herself way more consistently, because she actually doesn't drop as many stars as you would think on her NP. It'd be way better as a quick servant. You could quick chain and get just 50 stars from the NP dropping like 50 million and then the additional 10 from the chain. And then you could bust her chain after that and just do mad damage. So I think she's done now. Like, I don't think they're really going to do anything with her for a while. But if they do, swap the NP to Quick, give her that ability to swap between those two, and she's absolutely insane. But right now, she's a little underwhelming, especially after extensive use with her, which really makes me depressed because I have her NP2 on the NA version. So it's like, wow, I have an NA or NP2 version of a servant that I don't really get the opportunity to break out all that often because she kind of flops a lot of the time. Yeah, actually, I think I have to put Quetz and I think I have to put a lot of the free-to-play servants that aren't as good up here because they're not going to buff these guys. Like, they only I think Chloe's the only one that's ever gotten a buff, aside from Saber Lily, but Saber Lily's weird because she actually also has changing costumes and whatnot. She was the first free-to-play servant, so yeah, I think I'm going to put them there. She's very straightforward. She has a lot of stuff that's just basically good. Like, they gave her a battery, you know, free NP5 alter ego. She could put up some, like, passable numbers, but you know, nothing too insane. Like, surely you have something better to pull out in your box, right? Because I mean, most of these alter egos are people that are servants that people really want, especially like these two right here. Which, speaking of, why don't we just zip you on up there? Because Melt is absolutely insane. Like, good survivability because she has like the coup dodge skill, neuters everybody's NP damage while massively buffing, or not massive, but buffing hers up. She has an attack buff that's decent, multiplies into the NP damage buff. She does lower her defense, but the coup dodge skill should generally be pretty good for her. And she can loop her NP with quick chains, especially now with Scotty. So Melt is absolutely stupid. Like, she's really dumb. Like, if Melt ever goes on a raid up, you summon for Melt. She's stupid good. Passionlip, not the biggest fan of. She kind of falls into the same territory as Gorgon for me, where it's like, yeah, she's good. She's a solid, like, AoE for Buster, right? And I might use her every now and then. But, yeah, like she doesn't really do anything unique or super exceptional. In fact, the one thing that always disappoints me is that she always doesn't seem to hit very hard. Like, her damage always seems to be a little lackluster, right? So that always seems to be something that's a little irritable to me. But, I mean, she's not bad. She's not trash or anything. But, yeah, she could definitely use... Or, I mean... that's the thing. Like, people in this tier are like people that I think are done, and they're not really going to get a whole lot of buffs, and they're not going to change a whole lot. So it's like, yeah, I think she's just kind of stuck as like a very just midline unit, right? Then you have Kiara's kind of polarizing though, because are we talking about Kiara NP1 or NP2? That's really the thing, because Kiara NP1 is still very good. All of her skills are insane, like lowering defense, lowering arts resist, 50% battery, sucking up NP gauge, you know, by piercing invincibility with her NP, just all this crazy stuff. Having a really good goddess metamorphosis skill, you know, the ability to heal on her NP that gives her some sustain. You know, Kiara is very good even at NP1, but that jump to NP2 just seems to make the world of a difference in her actually being able to do more damage than a wet paper towel. So do keep in mind, even at NP1, I would still hold her up here because she is so good when it comes to challenge quests because of just everything she does to stall and just neuter the enemy. But if you can, it is true, you do want to get her to NP2. Oh, that was a rhyme, and I didn't even plan for that. But you do really want that NP2. It makes the world of a difference. She actually starts hitting really well, right? She actually starts doing very good damage. So who else do I want to slap in here? You know what? Let's talk about another broken servant. Actually, let's pull out someone else that's also really good that I put in like the best tier, and that would be someone like Van Gogh. Like, let's go ahead and let's talk about Van Gogh, dude. I'm rubbing my hands together, getting excited about Van Gogh because this is a servant that I always get to. Is Idol Alter not on here? Oh, she's right there. I was really sad for a second. I saw her. I was like, yo, did I forget a servant? But Van Gogh is a servant that people, they don't know she's good. They don't know. Every time I mention Van Gogh being good, people are like, why is Van Gogh good? I don't understand. Why is he always talking about Van Gogh? Dude, Van Gogh is insane. First of all, these guys were just like marketing geniuses, right? Usually a lot of the time, there's not a huge incentive to go for higher NP levels unless you want to farm more efficiently, or it's like Kiara and you just need the extra damage. Usually whatever this like scaling thing is, usually it's just like extra damage or whatever, right? But she's not an offensive servant, so there's actually a really good reason to go for higher NP copies. And that is the free 100% crit damage for 3 turns. And oh, by the way, if you're another edgy boy, you're another edgy foreigner, you get an additional 100% for free. Meaning NP1 foreigners are getting 150%. If you can find an NP5 Van Gogh, which I know we all have that one whale friend, right? You just bring them with one of your foreigners and you get 200% crit damage, right? Even the 100% crit damage for 3 turns for free to the entire party is already broken, right? Think about Merlin's charisma lasting 3 turns. Like, that's already stupid, right? But for foreigners, you can get 200%. Plus a 30% attack buff. Plus she provides stars. Plus she stuns the entire enemy party with terror. But don't worry, it lasts for 3 turns, so you're surely to get a lot of those effects, right? Then you just get to play Yu-Gi-Oh over here. If you played Yu-Gi-Oh and you know how like the counters work, where you place counters on cards, that's literally all these are. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm getting so much curse on all my people, I'm gonna die. It's like, nah, don't even worry. Look at this. Absorbs all the curse. Steals all the curse back, right? Steals all the curse to give you massive buffs. So like, Van Gogh is one of those like low-key, stupid good support type servants, right? That nobody talks about. Hopefully, when Van Gogh comes around, you guys will summon for her, right? Even if you like, you don't even have to push any of her skills, man. Don't even push the skills. Just use her NP. If this is like too much, if you can't figure out the curse stacks, if you're like, I don't get it, bro, it's too much with all the curse damage, then just use her NP. NP is not reliant on curses at all, and it is absolutely stupid. It is dummy good, right? Stupid good. So yeah, she's definitely going to be up there. Now let's talk about a more mid-servant. Let's just talk about someone else who's kind of... Actually, I can slap Oberon up there as well. So I've come around to Oberon a little bit. I know I did some videos talking about Oberon, and I was like, I don't know if he's like all that good. I don't know if he's all that broken. But after some extensive use with him and getting to like kind of test him out a little bit, yeah, I think Oberon is actually really stupid good. I've come around a lot, because he was going to be like very solid, but then I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, well, he does give like stupid battery to everybody. He gives them NP damage, and then he multiplies their NP damage by like 400 billion times, and then you basically just one-shot things, right? So, I mean, I had this idea where I was like, well, you know, you can bring Oberon to like a 1 to 2 turn fight, and he'll be really good for that, because then, you know, maybe he'll attack, and then you have somebody else go Super Saiyan 3, then they blow him up. It's like, or you just have Oberon be an anchor, right? You just like start fighting a boss, and then Oberon comes out, and you're like, oh, I want to end this fight right now, and you pop his skills, or you just plug suit him in, and you're just ready to end the fight. So I think he's really, really good. I think I was actually guilty of downplaying him a little bit, because I actually think he's a lot better than I was giving him credit for, just because... Yeah, as like a finishing guy for, you know, one of these challenge quests or something, he's going to be really good. Plus, you know, he's decent for farming with the double Tamamovich system as well. So he just has a lot of utility, even outside of just making people go unga bunga for, you know, one turn before they turn into, you know, an absolutely useless servant. But yeah, let's see, who do I want to talk about next? I'll do you. You're pretty easy to slap up here because you're basically like Dante's, but instead of hitting a little harder, you have a 50% battery, so it's supposed to kind of even itself out. When Voyager first came out, I had some pretty extensive use with him at NP1, and he does seem to farm fairly well. Although, do keep in mind that my experiences were a little worse than what the average persons are probably going to... Well, not the average, but what other players might experience, because I didn't have like a K-scope or anything, and, you know, mine was NP1, but he still seemed to farm fine for the most part. I did put a little bit of grails into him as the time went on, because I actually did want to get more use out of him, and I was using him to farm a lot of stuff, and as I put grails into him, he actually was performing better and better. So that is something you can do if you want to use him at NP1. He does perform pretty well in that aspect. Summer BB, I could slap up here. Summer BB, even if you don't think that, you know, the rest, her skill 1, skill 2, and NP are all that good, it doesn't matter. Skill 3 is one of the most, like, game-breaking things we still have in the game. That the fact that nobody else has gotten that similar buff just goes to show how crazy that thing is. I mean, just think about, like, the last fight for Lost Belt 4, right? The Tree and the Ashfataman fight, right? That's a fight that a lot of people find really, really hard to beat. They're like, I don't know how to beat it. It's just such an intense, hard fight to get through. But Summer BB allows you to turn that into a farming node with Parvati, right? You Scotty Parvati Summer BB that, you lock in your hand, and you 3-turn it, right? You take like what could have been a really hard fight based on RNG and whatnot, and you just guarantee that you would 3-turn it, right? And she does that for a lot of boss fights. That's just one of the best examples that I think really shows how powerful she is. Because keep in mind, not only that, but then she's providing stars for the party. If you want her to take over being the DPS, she has a battery. She has her own crit buff. She has still like the same good Jalter crit buff, right? That she and the free-to-play version have, right? It's actually just stupid good, right? It's actually just absolutely insane, right? So she can go from being a decent damaging, you know, AoE servant to then just turning any boss fight into a farming node. Like, Summer BB is actually really stupid good. So is the free-to-play version. The free-to-play version has a very good crit skill. She has the ability to cleanse debuffs off of your allies, which is very invaluable. She can, oddly enough, she specifically removes dodges and then stuns servants, which is a little odd, but not the most useless thing in the world. And then because she's an NP5, like, I would give her a little bit of slack for being a Moon Cancer and not being able to be the best offensive servant, because it's kind of a similar issue that rulers have. But she's a free NP5, so you actually can use her pretty well, because being an NP5 does somewhat balance out the fact that her class isn't the best when it comes to offenses, because they're only super effective against Avengers and Berserkers. So yeah, BB's very good. She's a decent utility servant that can actually pop off as a very good DPS type servant. So I do like her a lot. Summer Kiara. See, this tier's looking a little fat, right? So I'm thinking about starting to bump... I'm going to start bumping some people up here, right? To this next tier. And I think Summer Kiara might be one of those people. Because, let me see. Summer Kiara is pretty good. I would consider her to be one of the best. Actually, maybe what I could do... No, I can't do it once per class, because they both have to be up here. I was like, maybe these would be like the best ones of their class. Maybe I should do that. I think that could be a little cheeky. I could do that. No, that's going to be way more divisive than we already have it. I can't be doing that. I can't be doing that. We can't have these last-minute ideas here. But Summer Kiara, basically, if you look at her initial skills, you're like, okay, she's pretty solid. But then she has this ability to rank up the skills and make them even stronger. So then she starts getting, like, bigger batteries, bigger damage, you know, bigger stars, all of that stuff. And it makes her really, really solid, right? It just makes her very good when it comes to challenge quests and, like, more difficult content. She's basically just, like... Hey, so you know how Alter Ego Kiara is really good in a lot of these boss fights? What if we just made her a Moon Cancer, so you could also bring her to fight, like, Avengers, and also just not have her get absolutely clapped by, Actually, no, I don't know why they didn't do that. Actually, Alter Egos really don't get clapped by much of anything, so I don't know why they would have swapped her class, but I don't know. Moon Cancer, so diversify Kiara out a little bit. For whatever reason, I was thinking Alter Egos were weak against rulers, like, because I was thinking of Moon Cancer Kiara, so I got it backwards for a second. But no, yeah, she is definitely very, very solid. And I think I'm actually going to... This is going to be seen as blasphemy by some people, but I'm going to put Kagekiyo up there above, in a higher tier than Jalter. Yes, I will, for the 100% free crit damage the absolute insane bloody warpath that she rummages. The fact that I think that removing buffs is a bit better than just having buff block for one instance, I think is a bit better. Who else do I want to bump up? Do I want to bump anyone else up? Because I'm like Kiara, I would love to put her up there because I do think she is really good. But I think in order to be up here, you would have to have higher NP copies. Like, you would have to actually have her at like NP2 or higher, which I think for this, I'm just considering most of them at NP1 except for free-to-plays. Space, I would also like to put Space Ishtar up there, but I don't know if I can do that. I don't think she's quite good enough outside of just being a farmer. So I'm going to leave it like this. Okay, we're going to expand it a little bit like that. We're going to work with this. Let me pick out some of the servants I consider average. Like, I consider you a little average, you a little average. And God, they look how they massacred my girl. Let me just blitz through this because I know we're kind of we're kind of running on a long time here. I'm gonna try to speed up through the rest of this video, but and you. So the Abigails, basically, they don't do anything super exceptional, but they do a lot of very good basic stuff. Like, they have stuns, they have terror status, they have a decent enough buff. You know, this one focuses more on like lowering defense, obviously, but they don't do anything super insane, but they're not bad, right? Like, they just are very basic good servants, right? And this one, like, so this one's defensive down oriented. This one is more like kind of giving some decent buffs to the party, like the NP refund and whatnot. So they're not bad. Again, they're just very generic. Janako, I would almost consider like a really decent support type servant, but then they gave her like a damaging NP. It then gives her invincibility. So it almost seems like she was a prototype for Mothman over here, because it almost seems like she wants to do the same thing where like she can loop her NP and stay invincible the entire time, but she just doesn't do it that well because they also wanted her to be a support type servant. So don't really know what they were going with that one. It just seems a little odd. And then Idol XX, I mean, I thought she was going to be the chosen one. I thought she was going to be the one to be like the quick looping goddess, because it's a free-to-play, you know, quick servant. I was like, she's gonna be the one, and she just, I don't know, man. They gave her like special damage mod against metal enemies. I'm like, what are you guys doing, man? Like, you guys are definitely out of pocket for this one. She's not bad, but like, when BB as a free-to-play unit is on the same list, it's like, yeah, I definitely consider BB to be like a whole tier better. It's just like, and unfortunately, she's free to play, so I don't think they're going to really buff him at all. Like, that's kind of the unfortunate bit. I think they're just kind of set in that path, right? Yeah, you're really good because, so, she's got basically everything you would want, right? She's got like a massive attack buff, an invincibility, a very good damage mod against the threats against humanity, which is going to just be very good no matter what part of the game you're in. Because like basically all of like the main bosses are considered threats against humanity, like most of the main ones are. So she's going to be very good at helping you out for that. The fact that she's a foreigner means you can bring her to pretty much any of those. She's arts, so she pairs with Artoria, who gives you a further bonus against threats against humanity, which scales very well. She has a battery, she drops a little bit of stars, just generally very solid, you know, single target foreigner. I think she has very high value in that aspect, that she's going to help a lot of players out in just killing bosses, chopping down trees, all that good stuff. Same thing for Hokusai. I actually want to put Hokusai in the top tier, but she has failed me a few times. Because Hokusai is also very basic, but very good. Because she's packing a lot, but they're all like really good things. Like the 30% battery, the dodge, the arts buff is very good for helping her loop. And then the fact that whenever she attacks with her arts card, she lowers enemy defense to give her even more damage. Makes her insanely good. The damage mod, everything that she has is just very good. And I think it pushes her to that next level, right? So then we have Yang. Yang I almost put in the same tier as like a single target Hokusai with the added buff of being able to have like burn niches. She also has like the effect where she can like suck up massive amounts of NP, which I do really like to have. She is also uniquely one of the few servants that has a very good matchup against Serranos, the, spoiler alert, final boss of Lost Belt 6, and that boss, if you have not heard, is insanely hard, right? It is very, very hard to get through. And she is uniquely one of the few servants that actually has a decent matchup against him, right? So Yang is definitely very good for that. But just the long and short of it, you'll get a video in like 3 months when she comes out. I'll explain more why she's good there. But the long and short of it is she's kind of like Hokusai, but single target. And then Ashia Doman. Doman was building off of Van Gogh. I guess I probably do need to pull him up. You know, I'm trying to get to the end of the video before we hit like 40 minutes or something, but he kind of piggybacks alongside like the Van Gogh because they're both like curse kind of based servants, right? But he wants to be paired with evil people, right? So he kind of has like a curse thing going on because they slapped that on his NP. It's to kind of give him synergy with Van Gogh. But if you look at his skills, he just wants to be paired with evil people, right? Because you pair him with evil people, you can give him a total of like 100% crit damage, and then you can give them some big old 40% attack buff, right? All that good stuff. And then, I mean, he has an 80% battery. Like, that's also kind of another reason I'm slapping him up there. Like, he's not a bad servant. He's very good. He's very good for your Chaldea. But I think this is what I'm pretty confident in going with. Do keep in mind, let me make this clear one more time. These servants, I'm not saying are just definitively like objectively better than these guys. This tier, these are people. No, actually, hold on. There is one change I gotta do. Hold on. There is one more change. Hold on. I just noticed he's just trying to sneak in there. Never mind. These guys are people that I think are gonna be in like this tier after they get maybe 1 or 2 buffs, right? I think they're like 1 or 2 buffs off from being able to compete with a lot of these very solid servants. These guys, I think, are pretty much done. They're not really going to change, so I'm putting them in average. These are guys that I consider, these are like the main servants you would break out for like challenge quest farming, all that good stuff. And these are like borderline must summon servants, right? Summer Kiara is probably the only one that people are going to like, and I guess Kagekiyo, right? But trust me, when they come out, go look up some gameplay for them. They're both exceptionally very, very good. They're both servants I highly recommend people summoning for. So it's like, these are like almost must summons, right? Like these are like the must summon servants. These are like borderline must summons or just really, really good. Like these are like the servants I would reach for in my box to go for. Like for instance, I'm gonna reach for actually there aren't really no example, because I was gonna say I would reach for Jalter over Gorgon right in my box, but it's like, well, yeah, obviously if you're gonna do a single target fight, bring a single target. But you guys get what I'm saying. If there was a servant in this tier that was basically Jalter, just a little bit worse, I'm reaching for Jalter first. Okay, I feel like I've been here for too long, and that's why I'm starting to ramble. Thank you guys for checking out the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. The next tier list I'll probably do whenever I get around to it is going to be the gold night class banner, so I'm really looking forward to doing all that stuff, and looking forward to people agreeing, and then looking forward to all the people that are just like, I don't like this guy, he put Himiko in the best tier, I don't like Himiko, trash. Or someone that's like, actually I use Samba Quetz to beat every single boss in the game, so therefore I think she's like, no, talking about the design of the servant, bruh. That's what we're doing. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace. Late, guys.